What's shaking, cats and kittens? This is Rob Lee from Truth in This Art, your favorite podcast. Every week, I help share the stories of artists, cultural leaders, and entrepreneurs. Small business is the backbone of a thriving community. So this month, I want to show some extra love to our presenting sponsor and small business, Double Dutch Boutique. For the holidays, remember to shop small, shop local. Double Dutch Boutique carries locally made in Baltimore vendors such as This Sporting Life, Creative King, Black Radish Handmade, and so much more. Head on over to 1021 West 36th Street in Hamden or on the web at www.doubledutchboutique.com and tell them Rob Lee sent you. Welcome to Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. And today, I have the distinct pleasure here in studio. Yeah, studio. It's a Friday, so we're in studio. I'm here with the senior footwear creative with experience in both performance run and sportswear. Please welcome Yurri Mial. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you here. So let's get into it. Tell me about your work. I'm going to keep it bland. I'm not even going to say with where. Just tell me about your work because I'm sure it's more than just that one area.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do spend a great deal of my time working at Under Armour. So currently I am a design director in footwear there and leading up like the training space. We have a partnership with Dwayne The Rock Johnson, which I deal with all that stuff on the footwear side. And also we have like a recovery category that we're kind of emerging now. So been doing that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of my work it's holistically, I think it's around creating products for people that, you know, are solutions for them and their performance needs, and also like aesthetically and fashion-wise as well, right? And so I think footwear is kind of an avenue for both. I think if things can be functional and beautiful at the same time, then that's like a double win. So
is definitely a double. As you probably noticed when you came in, I have a few Under Armour items on currently. And that's just what I do, here's the thing. Because I kind of gravitate towards certain items that are in that sports style kind of space. Mm-hmm. It's like, I can just wear this all the time. And when I went back to work in a day job, I was like, I've been wearing kind of like workout-ish stuff that's fashionable. So that jacket, these like pants I have on, I'll wear those all the time. It's like, I gotta wash these eventually. I'm kind of living that life or whatever. But yeah, it was like it gave me this false sense of like, these are clothes, right? It's like, yeah, but also you can't always wear them. So, tell me about the process in terms of conception tell me the process, but key in on maybe the conception components of like, this is the thing that we want to do.
Yeah.
To the actual like rollout piece of it. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a couple different ways that it can happen. I mean, the formal way I think it happens with most companies is, you've got like a team of people. There's obviously like an overarching marketing agenda in what they're trying to promote in certain things. But when you get to the actual product teams, you usually have a PLM who's like a project line manager, and they're kind of creating briefs. You have a design function and like a development function. And in an ideal scenario, all three of those components kind of work together. And, when we're working on projects, we're working about 18 months ahead of time. And so, there's time in that calendar to where you're going to look and say, like, what do we want to do? And that should be kind of vetted against what are the business needs, right, in order to continue growing this business. But and then what aspirational things do we want to deliver, creative things that maybe, we're not doing yet, things that we're looking at in the marketplace that are maybe starting to emerge, and figuring out how we can, enter that space in a meaningful way. And so I think it's a couple different ways of how things can come. Sometimes they're just like things that are like, all right, cool, we did a fat tire a year ago, so now we need to update it, right? And so you just kind of know that's coming. But then there's like, well, what if there's a different concept altogether, and we're seeing a completely new trend? How do we get in the market for that? But once you kind of have those briefs kind of created, and usually they're the best ones are built with everyone in mind. Everyone's kind of input to a degree. It kind of starts with just like seeing what's out there in the market currently, seeing what things can kind of help inform that. What are consumers doing in this space, right? To help like validate why you're doing this thing to begin with, correct? Yeah. Sometimes you can create things that nobody needs, right? Yeah. You know, and it could be a sense of you're just too early, right? Or maybe no one really needs it. Yeah. But yeah, so you want to kind of, you know, be validated in what it is you're kind of creating and see that there's a usage for it. And then it's about, you know, what kind of, for me, like aesthetic inspiration I'm looking to, whether it be architecture, whether it be, I could be reading a book about something and it could be a really interesting concept that could strike, like it could cause me to think differently about something. And then I could maybe somehow utilize that in my process. Or it could be something very aesthetic. It could be, you know, some people love looking at cars. Some people love looking at furniture and product design. For me, it's not like any one thing. It's really just like, what's the I guess maybe mood it is I'm trying to communicate. And if I find, I'll just like, my mind will be like on that wavelength and I'll just see things that are like, yo, that would be cool. Right, like right now I'm looking around this room and I'm seeing like the foam on the walls and I'm like, this is a really cool texture for like rubber, like or this is a really cool like molding pattern for like TPU. Like it's just, I see stuff all the time. So you know, and I kind of like put it in my mind in certain places, and then it's like when I feel there's a project, I'm like, oh, I remember seeing that thing on the wall. That was really cool in the different directions. I could be a traction pattern. Like, yeah, you know, and so it's kind of like random in that way, but still yet very focused at the same time. And so collecting a lot of information, a lot of visual, a lot of, I guess just like, just visual ideas. And then I kind of apply them based upon, well, what is the usage? What do I want to communicate? What's the mood? And then like functionally, like what do I want this thing to do? You know, is this product more about, you know, is it more functional led and performance led, or is this going to be more about comfort? And so therefore, like my aesthetic choices might lean one way or another based upon what I'm trying to communicate. And so so that's like all just the inception part of it. For me now, like I used to sketch a whole lot. Like I back in my, like I used to work at Puma back in the day, and I still have this notebook. It's like when I first started, and I got this big project, and I just didn't know. I was just so scared. And so I just like I filled a whole sketchbook with just one project, like all these different variations. It was crazy. But now I got to the point to where it's like, I think about what I want to accomplish first, what, you know, like I was kind of explaining. And so I've learned to like refine a lot of things in my mind. And then by the time I'm sketching things down, it's more this like refined concept. And now I'm just kind of just working out lines and working out like, all right, how does this aesthetically balance together? But from then, once you kind of got that process, you start getting your ideas down on paper. And kind of in your mind, it's like, well, you know, we have design presentations. We have like these 25%, 50, 75, 100. And so you kind of go through the design phase. You're presenting the design. You're building a presentation around it and explaining the concept to people and your different ideas. And basically, as you go on, you're like narrowing down and getting more finite with where you're trying to go. And as you're doing that, you know, you're starting to think about then like, okay, for footwear specifically, is like materials, right? Think about materials, and I mean, materials are a beast of their own in terms of just all the things you could do. And so you're trying to think about that because those things, you know, form is one thing, color is another thing, materials are a whole other thing. And so all these different things, and as a designer, you're trying to use all these different mediums to like come together and make sense, and just kind of communicate something really beautiful. And so all these parts kind of come into the process. And once you start to get that, and usually you'll have teams of people that also like help with that. So there'll be like a color designer to help with. There'll be a material person to help you with that as well. And you kind of got that. And then from there, once it's like this beautiful concept on paper, right, on screen, or maybe even a 3D, it's time to kind of make it real. And so from there, we have to create these like tech packs, which are pretty much like, you know, just these very detailed drawings, because like you're taking this thing from 2D to 3D now, and so you have to communicate that. And usually your development partners are in Asia maybe, or you know, sometimes in Europe, depending upon where you're working. And you know, you're communicating these things to these factories, and then they're kind of going back and forth, and you're, you know, getting this thing now from paper to this actual 3D model or a sample, and then you're kind of working it. And it's just like it's kind of ongoing process. And it's funny because like it could go on forever in terms of being a creative, I'm sure you've had that feeling where just you keep messing with something and tweaking it because your ideas are changing, and now you're like, okay. And so you have to kind of learn how to like how to set a end goal for yourself and just kind of stick to that and know that, I'm sure nothing ever feels like this is it, but you kind of learn like, okay, cool, this is as good as it can be for the time that I've set myself, to be in this thing, and you move on, because again, in this world that I'm in, it's like we're creating products all the time, and so you're working on multiple things, multiple seasons, so there's always an opportunity to kind of learn from what you did put out, and now for the next iteration, it's like, okay, well, how can I improve? The feedback that I get from the marketplace, they're saying this thing, all right, so now we can update this thing. So that's kind of the process all in all. So.
Thank you. Now I feel like I should be going into like design. And
we're all designers.
Yeah, sure. Take this. Podcast sneakers. Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. It's just like there's a definitely for comfort, because we all sit on our asses all the time. That's all we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, just sit on our asses and talk into microphones. Use this like material. So what this is not even on here, but I think the always kind of progressing and looking at like where you're at. It's not really that finished product or what have you, but it's like I have to get something out there. So one of the things that I kind of took from people in, I guess, the marketplace, the consumer, the listeners, what have you, would be like, we want to learn a little bit more about like the guest, like outside of, hey, they make this, they do this, this is cool, great to learn about the process. And that enabled me to come up with like, or kind of informed me to come up with these rapid fire questions, and you'll get those at the end. But essentially it's like, I may want to know what movie this guy likes. I might want to know like, so what are you eating? What are you eating for your last meal? I might want to know that. Yeah. So that gives that extra layer, and it doesn't feel like it's stagnant. So if I go back to, and again, doing this podcast since like the summer 2019, go back to there and seeing like how much it's grown and how much it's changed. And ultimately, I still feel like it's still part of that same like line. Yeah. It's not so different, but it's still like progression. What kind of thinker would you describe yourself as? Because when you were describing that process, I was just like, I relate to it, but I was like, oh, you're in a different place. You're in a different place, and I dig it. I
mean, definitely analytical in a lot of ways. I think, my first response was like overthinker, because I think I tend to do that. But it works out in terms of products. I don't know if it works out in terms of like interactions with people or trying to like assume what people are going to do and all that stuff. But when it comes to products, definitely analytical. I think it's a combination of just like thinking about what it is I want to accomplish, and like then thinking about like, well, how is that best communicated in other places, and familiar that are like adjacent to what it is I'm trying to do, and trying to just analyze, okay, like what elements from that do I need to distill and impute into this thing so that people can like intrinsically just like or innately get what it is I'm trying to do. And so and I just spend a lot of time being in my head, like I said before, I even get to the points where I'm like sketching things out, because I need to set up in my mind like, here's the goals of this project, here's what I want it to deliver upon, here's the mood I want it to kind of exude, and I need to have all that kind of like figured out, so that way it really just creates guardrails for me, because again, when you're creating, like, it's very easy, and like I said earlier in my career, I didn't put those guardrails up for myself, and I would just spin my wheels. And so, I think I've definitely honed in, like, and refined my ability to, like, kind of, like, analyze and decide what it is I'm trying to accomplish before I just, like, get into it.
Thank you. From an aesthetic standpoint, Under Armour always felt like good functionally. I always kind of looked at, this is close to equipment versus this is something that, oh shit, this is fire. I could wear this with this fit. And aesthetically, it's like not much, but that's changed, I think. What is your take on it? What was the thinking and maybe that shift?
I think people are just starting to kind of understand that, consumers are not like monoliths in a certain way. Like, so I think, people, you can focus on a certain element of a person's life, but I think more than ever nowadays, we're seeing that people are a multitude of things, right? They're not just being categorized as just this thing. Like, whereas, growing up, like, you only really thought of the athletes as, like, just the athletes. That's all you really had access to is, like, you see what they do on court, and that's what you cared about. And now it's like, you see what they do on court, you see what they do off court, and like sometimes what they do off court is more interesting than what they do on court, and they built so it's like, and I think that's kind of like, manifested that kind of thinking just in general, like with people. So you have more access, and we see that people are more dimensional than what we might want to, or what we were giving credit for before. And so I think the consumer, like, they are athletes and they want to do these things, but they also want to look good. Yeah. And I think, I think companies that pay attention to what consumers are doing, they shift and they start to make things that will that their consumers can kind of live with in and out of whatever activities, and so I think we've been kind of doing a bit more of that. I know that's kind of been a driving factor for me. My background, it doesn't really come from sport. So, like, though I can understand and I want to understand, what are the functional things that we need to accomplish, it's like I care about personally, like, is this thing fire?
Yeah,
Does this look good?
Absolutely.
Because I want people to buy it and want to interact with it beyond the experience of just like, all right, we worked out, and you do that for a couple hours, but it's like, well, what are you doing for the other hours? And, so, that's kind of my personal, like, just belief, and I think, we've been seeing that kind of happen a lot more within the brand, so it's exciting.
That's great, and like I feel like it's moved up that tier, at least from my standpoint. Like, there are certain things that I'll buy, being more focused around the fitness and working out, the athletic side of things. It's like, let me get these Asics. These are my training shoes or what have you. And it's like, no more Under Armour for my training shoes. Like, this is kind of my fashion fit right here. Yeah. This is like, I'm going out with the missus, and I'm going to put on my Under Armour sneakers.
That's great to hear, man. I still want to make sure, I hope we're still delivering things that are also performance. I think the best place to be is when you're in between, where it's like, nah, these are my... these work really well, and they also look good. So I'm going to go to the gym in them, and I'm going to walk outside the gym, and I'm going to go to the bar in these too, and I'm going to do this. And so, that's kind of where I see the bullseye being, just kind of like in the middle of all those spaces. So
you touched on whether something is just like pop and something's like fire. So this is a loaded question, but
oh boy. All right.
Define fashion. Is it a concept of fashion? Is the concept of fashion something that you routinely revisit? And I would imagine yes. But how has that changed for you? Maybe how you define it from the beginning of your career to where you're at now?
Fashion, yeah. I definitely think it's a construct of made. It's evolving, right? I think the act of the act of being fashionable is very subjective, right? Mm-hmm. I think as time goes on, we, as a, culture or people in general, like we're more accepting of just like different subcultures and subsets of fashion and I felt like when I was younger, like there was only like a couple ways to look or dress, right? And now it's like there's so many more variations and just different trends and there was like a time where like I feel like growing up, you were either in fashion or you were out of it. Like, right? This was in style or you were out of it. And now it's like, nah, because it's like transcended the moment, and it's just like we can go back and look to, how people were dressing in the 50s and be inspired by that. And that can be your style. And you are fashionable, right? Or you could be looking to this very futuristic, utopian or dystopian aesthetic that isn't, we're not even ready for yet. And that can be your style, and that's fashionable as well, right? So there's no like, I don't even know what it means to not be fashionable anymore. I just think it's more so you just knowing what you like and kind of like sticking to that. Or even if you're like, I'll jump around. Today I want to be in this and that. Like, so I guess it's liberating in a way to where I don't feel beholden to like a look really. And I can put on things that if I like it and if it makes sense, and I can explain if someone were to ask, like, why are you wearing that? Like, and I can, and even if it's just like, yo, this is mad comfortable and it feels really good. Like, that's like functional, fashion, and that's great. So yeah, I think it's just been expanded for me, and I don't know that there's a wrong way.
Yeah. I definitely function as the thing. That's why I wear so much Carhartt. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, workwear. Yeah.
I just remember my man. I was sitting and recording at the home studio. My co-host Torrin, he was like, "Why do you look like you're in a Cuban baseball team?" Because I had like the red Under Armour long sleeve base layer with like the blue Carhartt over it.
Oh wow!
And he was just like, "Are you batting fourth? Like, what's happening?" And I was like, "Look, you can kiss my ass, as you can do." So, who or what are some of your aspirations in creating designs? You touched on like kind of where it comes from. It can come from anything such as this, anything in terms of like architecture, but let's key in on something that is super, super odd. Like, I was eating some kumquats and I was looking at the seeds and it's like, you know what? That'll look fire on a sneaker. What comes to mind for you when it comes to a really odd source of inspiration?
Man, this is just coming to mind. So, and I don't even know if I've necessarily found a way to utilize it yet, but I remember being on campus and being in one of the parking lots and walking from the parking lot to the building, and I guess it rained, and there was like a Tesla outside, and there was like raindrops all over this Tesla. But like from the way the light was hitting it, and I guess the actual, like on the glass part of the roof and the back, like there's some sort of treatment on it that makes it like iridescent when the water hits it. And so it was all these little water driplets, but they were all like iridescent only on the water driplets, and like so like the glass is like black, or it looks black, but then like what the driplets were, it was like these little mini iridescent rainbows kind of, and it was the coolest thing ever. And I remember like just being up on this car just taking all these photos because I'd never seen anything like that before, and I'm still trying to figure like how do I implement that somewhere in a project. But yeah, I mean it can be anything, man. I mean I've been inspired by other apparel things. Like the Fat Tire, for instance, was kind of inspired by like samurai armor, which was
really
yeah. So the whole thing with that, there's these so if you look at samurai armor, if you've ever seen like you've got obviously the panel pieces, but there's like some really intricate knots, like they're Japanese, just very intricate, like ornate everything. It's beautiful, and everything's purposeful and just beautiful. But they have these things called these agamaki knots, and I was researching those, and they're like this functional yet beautiful element. There's different ways and arrangements you can tie them, and they meant different things. They can mean prosperity, good fortune. They could harness back to like your family's whatever, like all these different things. But at the same time, they were like these functional pieces that you could like hang armor on and all this stuff. And so for the Fat Tire, the lacing system was like heavily inspired by that, because it was just kind of like this very like ornate thing, but yet functional at the same time. So it can be anything, man.
I'm marking out over here. I was like, why aren't we friends? I have a shoe that has, I have like 3 Japanese tattoos, so it's ridiculous. And now I'm just over here marking out. I was like, yeah, this is a perfect addition for that month I was telling you about. So yes, I'm
awesome, man.
Very, very happy now. Should even get on my face now. So advice time. Let's look at this. Yeah. What are the most critical aspects of designing clothes, shoes, and where would an inspiring designer start? Whether it be a certain program, whether it be having that sketchbook, what does that look like for you?
Well, I guess it's a couple of things. I think it's like whether like you want to land a job, or you want to actually, not to say or actions if you couldn't do both, but like landing a job, it's just like some formal things. I think a lot of times it's like, all right, well, finding a good design program, learning the basics, right? I'm saying that, but at the same time, it's like as we continue on and evolve in our society, like we're seeing that, there's some really great talents that emerge that like don't go to school and things like that. But I would say, I would consider those people far and few between, that are very like kind of like savant-like, and just like they just know, and they just have this.
I have a vision.
The vision, right? And they just have to get it out, and so they're gonna like get it out regardless. So whether they go to school or not, they're gonna get it. But for a lot of us, sometimes we have to develop that and hone that ourselves and stuff. So I think design programs are always really great. But I say beyond that, like once you do that and learn the fundamentals, I think you have to have a good understanding of like, I think the world around you, and be able to kind of see the white spaces, right? And it's very easy to be consumed by all the things that you just see, but it's like, well, how do you put out things and how do you create things that aren't yet, they're just not, they don't exist yet. And that's a lot tougher. And I think you kind of have to have a certain sensibility to just knowing what's there, but then also being aware of what's not there and being able to kind of play in that realm. And that can be like a developed thing, I think, at times. And having a vision of, and after being in the industry or after doing what you've been doing for a time, you have to kind of, like look at what you're doing and figure out how you can kind of improve and figure out, like, what do you need to do to like elevate to the next level? So it's I don't know if it's any one thing, but I would definitely say at first, like knowing the basics, I think knowing what rules there are before you break them, and then figuring out what's your thing, like what unique things do you like, and figuring out how you can kind of concoct all those things that inspire you, and like how can that become something that is original that no one else is kind of doing.
That's great. So now I have two more real questions before I get into the ridiculous questions.
Okay.
What is your I find like whenever I start laughing at a question, usually people are like, what's this bullshit? What you're about to say? What is your best and worst fashion moment? Like for you, like it could be from the standpoint of like you designed something that didn't really go well, or something that's like, yo, I thought this fit was going to be fire. It was trash.
Everything I put on is fire.
See, same energy.
I'm trying to think. I don't know that I can.
No losses.
No, I definitely take. I mean, no, I remember this. Okay, so I went to design school in Philly, Art Institute of Philadelphia, and I had a roommate. He was a fashion designer, and he was making this he made this little beanie. And it was like this red beanie, and honestly, it had like little polka dots on it. For whatever reason, I don't know if it was because that was my guy, and it was just like, you made this thing, I want to rock. And I was just like, I would rock this little beanie thing. Yeah. And I thought I was like, yeah, I got, whatever my fit was, like, it was cool. I remember I had some like black and red foam posits, and I was just like, yo, this red matches the red of my hat. Like, we coordinating out here. It's cool. And we went to this house party in Philly, and I was in the kitchen or whatever, and people had been drinking, and I never forget, like, this girl he was talking to, she was like drunk a little bit, and she was just like clowning me. And she said, I remember her, I think she said like I look like one of the Seven Dwarfs or something like that. And I was just like, yo. And I was like, I wasn't at the point now where I am, where I'm kind of like, nah, if I like this, like, yeah. I like this. I wasn't that person yet. So I was like, man, all right.
Taking the hat off.
I never wore that hat again. I took that hat off for the rest of the house party. Yeah, I'll never forget that. So I guess that was the L there. But I think the real L was me just succumbing to her judgment. Yeah. Like, I should have just been like, nah, this is fire. Like, what are you talking about? But yeah, I remember that one. That one, yeah, that still hurts a little bit. But and then I don't know. What's my best moment? Yeah,
or one of the moments that stick out as like, yo, this is a highlight.
Oh man, I had to be something recent. I'll say for me, this is a highlight. I don't even know if anyone even complimented me about it. I mean, people have always said nice things, but I think, so there was like, just for a long time when I was in school, and the same time in Philly, there's this brand called Vism, and my boy actually put me onto it. And they like, this brand is like Japanese based, and they make these moccasins basically, mm-hmm. right? But these shoes are they're like $700. So I used to be like, man, that's crazy. But like when I get on, I'm gonna get a pair. Yeah. And I remember, I'll never forget, I was in Japan, I was in Tokyo for work, and we kind of had this really busy schedule. And I know this sounds really like contentious, like I was in Tokyo. And,
Sake.
Yeah, right, the sake. But we were, we had this very like kind of like planned out schedule of things we wanted to do, and I was like, yo, there's no way I'm gonna be over here and not try and go to like Harajuku and try and get to or it's like Shibuya and go to one of the stores because there was like a Vism store.
Yeah.
And I was like, I gotta go. I want to go. And I remember going and trying on the shoes in person and like buying them. And I was just, for me, that was like a highlight. I was like, wow, like I've got these grails, and and also they were cheaper when you buy them in the country as opposed to trying to get them here. So yeah, that was a highlight for me.
Yeah, I have my Japanese trip in mind. I've done my test one. It did not involve fashion. It's involved culture.
Yeah.
So I watch a lot of wrestling.
Okay.
New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they came here. Well, they came to Long Beach for the first time in the U.S. in their 45-year history a couple of years back.
Oh wow!
So me and my mans, we went out there, we marked out, and then we went to like Little Tokyo. We had some sushi that was a little sus. We got racially profiled, which was hilarious because I was just like, I'm from Baltimore. I ignore jaywalking.
Yeah.
So now it's like that's the appetizer for the real Japanese trip. I'm gonna go to a sumo hall. I'm gonna hang out with Roppongi. I told my girl I'm going to get a Yakuza tattoo. She was
wow.
You are bugging.
A Yakuza tattoo, are those like the full body joints?
Well, you got to live a life.
Yeah. I mean, those, like the bodysuit joints, like they're like, that's an art form in itself, man. Those are.
Get the whole back covered.
Yeah, the whole back. It's like everything, like the arm, and it's like a suit.
I mean, I'll be the 6'4", 300-pound Yakuza that doesn't speak any Japanese.
That's fire, bro.
I'm here for it.
You just look. I'm with it.
Now, this is a ridiculous question. This is going to be the last one before I get to the rapid fire ones. Describe your approach to design, but as a song.
Ooh.
I know that is a wild one, but I think I read something in the research that you're a bit of a music person.
Man.
Or you can describe your approach as maybe, you know what? I take the same approach that this musician might take.
Okay, I like that.
Because the song is hard. The song is really hard, actually.
Yeah, it's like just like.
It's like we talking mixtapes. We talking like B-sides.
I'm gonna go artist.
Okay.
Man, even okay.
That's good. This is gonna be interesting, I think.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Because whatever I say, I'm just like, man, someone's gonna be like, what are you talking about? Like
you sure?
No, like, what are you saying? So there's like what I am in my mind, and then what might be the actual reality and like the hit.
Feel free to go super specific. It's like, yeah, I'm Future, but from 2015. It's like, what?
Yeah. Man, this is tough. I want to say. So one of my favorite artists, I mean, I do love Kendrick Lamar, but I would not go as far as to say like I'm the Kendrick Lamar of footwear design because I don't think that. But I think in terms of like maybe early, because like early Kendrick was like, I mean, it was just very different. I remember when people like were not on it at all. I remember when I first listened to Kendrick, I was like, his rap cadence is weird. I didn't appreciate it because he was like the only one doing it that way. I was like, this is weird.
Oh, you're probably talking 2010, 2011.
Yeah, it was. Oh yeah, it was like 2000. Yeah, it was just like. And like I remember that whole like rigor mortis. I was like, this is dope, but it's weird. Like,
we're from a similar tribe. Go on. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I would say early Kendrick in terms of like kind of doing things that feel a little different and a little like maybe weird a little bit. But not people aren't necessarily caught on to it all the way. So it's just like okay, yeah. But then at the same time, I think there's like a level of like. It's like that mixed with like a little bit of like Drake in there, and I'm only saying that because they kind of contrast. And now Drake obviously is like the hit maker, hit after hit, and he can do no wrong. And so that part of him is not what I'm talking about because I can do wrong. But what I'm saying about him is that he's an artist that's kind of like. At the same time, like kind of generic in a way, where like everyone just kind of likes it, like you just kind of like it, and so there's a combination of like I think my process can be like sometimes I can do things that are just like really kind of weird and funky. Like I feel like the Fat Tire would be like one of these projects, kind of like it's kind of like a beautiful ugly shoe kind of. It's like to me, it's like it's it's kind of weird, but then at the same time I can do stuff that's very just like oh yeah, I get it, I like it, yeah, it's good. it makes sense. It's balanced. It works, and it's just like it feels like we concocted this thing to be a hit. So I'd say a combination of those two.
Respect it.
Yeah.
I have a thing for those. Like I've only owned 2 pairs of New Balances that don't really fit the Baltimore mode. I've never had any of those.
Really?
I've never
992s and
never had them.
Wow. Okay.
Never had them. I will say the most expensive shoe I bought when I was younger were I think it was the Air Max Duncans.
Okay.
The ones my dad was like, these look like gorilla palms. And I was like, they're ugly, but they're great. They're mine. And it was like, and it was hard finding size 13s at the time.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I always gravitate towards, nobody else is wearing these. Fantastic. Let me strap these on my feet. All right. So now I get to the rapid fire questions. I got 6 questions for you.
Okay. Hold on. What are the rules for the rapid?
So the rapid fire questions, you don't have to provide any extra context unless you really want to.
Okay.
So I might ask you, what's your favorite song? And you just answer it. Literally the answer, it is what it is. I said what I said.
Okay.
All right, first one. Favorite fashion memory, and I feel like this is a little repetitive, but favorite fashion memory.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick with getting those prisms. Yeah.
Do you have a style icon, and if so, who is it?
Multiple, but the one that comes in mind right now, I'm a stan. I think Salehi Bembury is great, and I think just because his originality and he's just like doing his thing unapologetically, and it just happens that everybody fucks with it. So I just love that.
Dream project.
Man. Honestly, I think my dream project would be something that's not related to like footwear at all. I do love music, so if I want to make a song.
Okay.
That's like a dream project, like and for it to be just something that I just think is really dope. Yeah.
Out of the shoes that let's just go with the Fat Tire for sake of argument. What is this might be rough because they can be like someone's kids. What is your favorite colorway of the Fat Tires?
Oh, the Mocha Rose is probably my favorite. That's out. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we got some
stroking my chin right here.
Yeah, I'll show you after after we're done with this. Some new ones.
Name another Fat Tire.
I don't even know what that
This is a trick question.
Name another Fat Tire. Don't even know what that means.
It's a beer also called a Fat Tire.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, okay.
I'm a nerd. I drink beer. I don't know what to tell you. This is the last one I have. Which athlete has the best sneakers in terms of form and function? Like, this is fire and they're great to work out and ball and whatever. What comes to mind for you?
What athlete? What's up? Okay. Past, present. I'm going to say some of the past stuff is probably more functional. My first answer is going to be, I'm going to go Kyrie.
Okay.
I think he has stuff that's a really good balance. I mean, yeah, a lot of people like to ball in those.
Yeah, I like the different colorways that came out too. I want to say I think the most recent joints that came out, I was like, okay, I could work in those. Yeah. I just remember it was one time I made the cardinal sin because I have kind of whitish feet, and I bought some Adidas, bought some I think it was like these dark rose joints, like maybe the first ones, and I was like, these are narrow. I couldn't wear them. And I waited because I have a habit. Yeah. And this is what's happening right now. So I've technically not tried on the Fat Tires. They're just in there. I was like, these are too fresh. That's literally what I said. And I was like, so I've always had this approach of just kind of sitting on sneakers. Yeah. And when people say, it's like, where you get them from? I'm like, oh, these old things? I like to do that. And because that just comes from my streetwear days and listening to a lot of Currency. Yeah. So that's when it burnt me. It's just like, you didn't know what these fit and you couldn't even return them, dummy. Right. So that's all the questions that I had. I want to thank you for coming on to this podcast. Tell the fine folks where to check out more of your work, your social media, all of that good stuff. And again, thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I'm on the gram. It's let me see, because I've been changing my name. I don't even know what it is on there. It's my name, but it's like the kind of phonetical breakdown. So it's YUR _REE _Mile. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of really just like post my work. And yeah, that's pretty much how I am. I try and like kind of minimize my like social media presence to a degree because I think it can take over our lives too much. And so, yeah. But yeah, you can. I do post my work there. And yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well. So LinkedIn is like the professional, like, I don't know, Twitter for me. I do like being on LinkedIn.
I've stalked all of these things.
Yeah. Okay.
In terms of research.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Diligent.
So for Yurri Mial, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
am Rob Lee saying that there are shoes, fashion, just fire fits, in and around your city. You just got to look for it.